Welcome to the AR Verb Notes page. This is truly one of the most exciting things that you're going to learn in Spanish. You've spent a lot of time learning vocabulary. You've learned all of the infinitives that end in AR. Now it's time to figure out how do I plug those infinitives into a sentence so I can actually start speaking Spanish. So the first thing you need to know is that it's very easy to identify a verb in Spanish, because verbs in Spanish will end in either AR, ER, or IR. Remember that list of the 40 AR verbs that you just got done working with? Every single one of those ended with the letters AR. We say that this verb is not plugged in. In other words, it's in the infinitive form. Another word for a verb being in the infinitive form is that it is unconjugated. We want to work and make sure that we have the technical terms so that when you're listening to or studying Spanish, you have all of the correct words. So then the process of actually plugging a verb in, we learned the 6-box conjugation chart. So the process of plugging that verb into the chart is called conjugating. And the verb is then conjugated. Conjugated verbs must always match the subject. So think back when we just got done learning about ser. We talked about ser and we talked about subject pronouns. And whatever box we pulled ser out of, we also had to pull our subject pronoun out of the same box. You're going to run into the exact same thing as we're working with AR verbs. And then to review, of course, our sentences in Spanish must agree in number and gender. It goes back to that whole underlining thing that we did with the adjectives and the subject pronouns and ser. When conjugating a verb in Spanish, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Seriously, all you have to do is memorize these 3 steps and you will be able to conjugate all of the verbs on that list of 40. The first thing you need to do is you start with your infinitive. We're going to take a look at what the 3 steps are, and then we'll go back and talk about some examples. The second step is you're going to drop the ending. In the case of AR verbs, our ending is always going to be those last 2 letters, or the AR. And then our third and final step is we'll add a new ending. Let's take a look and see exactly what that means with an example. We had the verb hablar on our list. So my step 1 would be starting with my infinitive. So I would have hablar. My step 2 is to drop the ending. So I would be left with habl because I took the AR off. And then my step 3 would be add the new ending. This is going to be what the 6-box chart down here below is for. So when you're conjugating AR verbs, just like everything else we've learned, everything fits into the 6-box chart. So my first person singular ending is O. And back when they created the Spanish language, there was, of course, the group that wanted everything to be hard and the group that wanted everything to be easy. So they battled when it came to AR verbs to try and decide if they wanted to go with something difficult or something easy. Fortunately for you guys, the group that wanted things to be easy won. They said if we're working with AR verbs, we want to remember the letter A. So the way it works is, of course, O in the first person singular, but then second person singular is as. Because it's an AR verb, there's an A. Third person singular is a, or the letter A. First person plural is amos. Once again, another A. Then ice. This is the one you would use in Spain. Don't forget that accent mark, but also a letter A. And then on. So if you take a look at this, you can see that there's an A here, an A here, an A here, an A here, and an A here. So essentially, all you have to do is remember the o, as, a, amos, ice, on, and you will be able to conjugate any of the 40 verbs on that list. So let's go back to our example. We talked about hablar, which we identified as the infinitive. Our infinitives are made of two parts. H-A-B-L, able, is what we call the stem of the verb. And then we have the A-R, which is what we call the ending. Once again, we started with our infinitive, then we dropped the ending. So I was left with able. In order to conjugate this verb, I'm going to go through first and write my stem inside every single one of the 6 boxes. Now comes the fun part. In order for it to make sense, I need to add my new endings. So we know that they're o, as, a, amos, ice, on. So I have hablo, hablas, habla, hablamos, habláis, and hablan. So I pulled my endings from up here, down here, and added it to the stem of the verb to get the entire conjugated form. So yo hablo, I talk. Tú hablas, you talk. Él, ella, usted habla. He, she, it, you formal talk. Nosotros or nosotras hablamos. We talk. Vosotros or vosotras habláis. You all, in Spain, talk. Ellos, ellas, and ustedes hablan. They talk, and you all everywhere talk. So here's an example of how you conjugate a verb in Spanish. I want you to try the next one. We have the infinitive. The infinitive is estudiar. In the infinitive form, it means to study. Don't forget to put that to in front of it. Now take a moment, pause the video, and let's see what you come up with. My step 1 was to start with the infinitive. I had estudiar as my infinitive. Next, I identified the stem, which was estudi, E-S-T-U-D-I. I then placed my stem in all 6 boxes, and now I'm ready to add the endings. Pause the video again if you need more time. In order to find out what the endings are, I'm once again looking at the 6-box chart that we just got done creating. I can see that my first person singular ending, which I pulled from the first person singular box, is an O. So I have estudio, I study. My second person singular is the letters A-S. I have estudias. You, informal, study. My next is the letter A, estudia. And that is he studies, she studies, it studies, or you study. Next, I have estudiamos. We study. Estudiáis. There are 3 vowels together, that is correct. You all in Spain study. And then I have estudian. They study, or you all everywhere study. Let's practice with practicar. Pause the video, give it a shot. Remember, the first thing you have to do is identify the stem. So I have practique as my stem. Then I identified my ending, and that's the AR. So the second step is then I drop the ending. That leaves me with practique in all 6 boxes. Now I'm ready to add my new ending. Pause the video if you need more time. My first person singular is practicó, I practice. Then I have practicas, you practice. Practicar, Shai practices. Practicamos, we practice. Practicáis, you all in Spain practice, and practican, they practice. We're going to write the following in the opposite language. Yo practico. Pause the video or try and answer on your own and then see what my answer is. I practice. Notice that my verb is conjugated. Tú hablas. You talk. That's the informal you. Él necesita. He needs. She takes. So you have to know that your infinitive on this one is tomar. You would not say ella tomar. That would be she to take, and that doesn't make any sense. So you start with your subject pronoun. Very important you know your subject pronouns. Ella, and then I know that tomar is the third person singular. So if I look at the other side of my notes, I can easily see that my third person singular ending for AR verbs is the letter A. So I have ella toma. We masculine talk. We masculine is nosotros. And then talk I know is hablar. So my step 1 is I start with hablar. My step 2 is I drop my ending. I'm left with habl. And then my step 3 is I add the new ending. So I have habl, and then I know because it's hablar, it's first person plural because it's nosotros, and then I have amos. I'm trying to talk you through all of the steps that you need to go through to conjugate. So we have nosotros hablamos. You all in Spain teach. So I have vosotros. Vosotras would also be acceptable because it doesn't specify gender. And then I know that teach, and I'm going to write it down here, is enseñar. My step 1. My step 2 is drop the ending. My step 3 is add my new ending, which would be ice because it matches with the vosotros. So I have vosotros enseñáis. And then the last one is ellos toman. Ellos is they, and then toman is take, and it can also mean drink. So it's they take or they drink. Hopefully this has been a helpful video in helping you understand AR verbs and how to conjugate them.